Let's begin now. Sure. So, did you install and were you able to install and practice some play around with the software? Okay. Any issues you're facing that we can take up right now? Yeah. Are you talking about Eclipse or are you talking about installing Python? Okay. Eclipse. Yeah. When we configure the okay, I'll just share my screen. Yeah. So, yeah. Over here, you install PyDev? PyDev, okay. So now when you create a when you right click and you create a new project, is this where you're facing an issue? Yeah, okay. Let me create a new project. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. That's also you can do it from there. So you were able to find perspectives like these as you see on my screen? Okay. Okay. But it's all working fine, right? You're not stuck or anything. You don't do you need my help on anything? All right. Good. So that's great. As you continue to use the Eclipse, I think you'll become better and better in understanding where is what. So that's a part of it's a part of the thing. Okay. So let's begin with today's topics. We will be covering We'll be starting with Python, its syntax. Yesterday we did see some indentation, how we write lines and comments. Okay, and today we are going to talk about a few more things around basic syntax of Python, some variables. Okay, yes, I am recording. Okay, so let's go back to our program, and over here in Python demo I'm going to create a new Python module, PyDev module, and I'll give it example 2. Okay, so usually what happens, the very first program or the very first expectation that we have, like as a beginner, is to get something output on the console. That we saw yesterday, some of it, right? The basic command to have any string on this console output is print. So you give print, and you notice as soon as you write print, the string turns blue, right? Which means that this is identified as a special keyword here. And then within the brackets you will give any string under single quotes or double quotes. So if I say hello world, and similarly I can use single quote also here. So both ways it works fine. Okay, this is a small Krishna, can you just mute yourself? Because you are able to hear me, I'm able to hear some background noises. No, I do hear voices in the background. Okay, fine. You're on mute, yeah. Yeah. So this is the basic command to output on your console window. Okay, so you can have print, and if you notice the color coding, so this is the advantage of using an IDE, that it will also separate the keywords from, from other things, from the variables or from any other string that you want to output. So these are the two ways you can output. Similarly, if I just will run it and show it to you. So both the strings are output on the console. Okay, so you can use it with single quote or double quote. That's one thing. Now we will talk about variables today. Okay, variables are are things like container. Okay, now as the word says variable, which means that there is something that is varying, that is changing. Okay, now visually if I want to represent, so what happens is, suppose I want to store a value in something, just like you store in container few things. Similarly, in programming language, we have to store a value. Now for example, the value is say 16. This is a number, and I want to store it in a variable, so that I can use this variable, the value in this variable, anywhere in the program. So how does it happen? Programmatically, you have to just understand the concept that you have you have your memory blocks. Okay, the computer has these blocks which are treated as memory blocks. Okay, now you want to store something like a container which is a, for example, the name of the variable is a, and you want to store in it 16. So what happens internally is, the program is going to assign some memory block to this variable called a. It is just like a name. Okay, by this name you refer to this value. So this program is going to assign these particular two blocks to call it a. So a is a reference to these blocks. Now currently there is nothing in these blocks, there is no value in them. As soon as you assign a variable, a, a value, some value to it, it is going to uh, store that value in that memory location. Now each type of variable, like suppose a is a variable that can contain an integer value, a can be a variable that can contain a string value. String means a word or something, right? W or WE, okay, with single quote. So depending on what value you are going to store in a, the kind of space it needs will differ. Okay, for integer, for example, it needs just 2 blocks to assign. Maybe for string it needs say 4 blocks to assign. So depending on what value you are assigning to a variable, it is going to basically allocate some memory blocks to that variable. Okay, and we can refer it by a name, right? So this is how the variables are created. When we say variable is defined, it actually blocks some memory for it, and when we assign a value into variable, that is when we say a equals 16, it fills in those blocks that value, right? So now we will see it programmatically. Okay, now I'll create a variable here, so you can name your variable by anything, but it has to start with alphabet, and it can be alphanumeric, right? Now this is important because you have to make sure that your variable name begins with alphabet or it's an alphanumeric. For example, you can have your variable name with A, it's an alphabet. You can have it as A, B, C, whatever. You can have it as a string, you can say word or variable 1, variable 2, likewise. Okay, so these are the ways you are identifying something, right? You are identifying with a particular name some value, just like human beings have name, they are identified with their names. Similarly, over here, whatever value you're going to store in a container, they are also going to be identified by something, right? So that is why we might also want to call them identifiers. Okay, we identify a variable by a name. Now these are the rules for identifiers, that they can be, the name can start with alphabet or can be alphanumeric, and the names cannot have any special character to begin with, right? You cannot begin a variable name with at the rate, hash, or dollar, or percentile, etc., right? So you cannot have the name begin with these special characters. Neither can you have them begin with any numeric. You cannot write 1a as variable name or one var, right? You can do it the other way around, that is alphanumeric. So that is the way we will create a variable's name. So this is a generic rule. Now I'm going to create a variable. When I say create a variable, I basically can say I am defining a variable, means I'm just writing a name, var1. So this is a variable. When I say var1, it goes and blocks a particular memory space for this variable to store some value in it. And in Python, I can directly assign a value by equal. When I say var1 equal, say 7, okay? So what it means is, in variable 1, in this reference name, the value of 7 is stored. So visually you can see a memory block will be assigned here, allocated here, and 7 will be kept in it, and we can refer to this by var1. Okay, so this is how we define and assign value to a variable. And you can print the value of variable by the same way. So this time when you're using variable to print the value out, you will not use double quote or single quotes. You will simply have the variable name here, right? So when I first save the program and right click, run as Python run, you see the value is been printed here. Okay, similarly, if we can reassign the value in variable 1. When we say reassign, simply write the variable name and give some other value to it. So this time I can make it 10, right? And I can print it out also. Printing we are doing basically to understand if the value is changing or not. Is the reassignment working or not? So this is the only proof area. You know, this is the place where we can check what the output is, the console, and by checking the output we know what is happening in the program, right? So when I run this, you see first the value of var1 is 7, and that gets printed here, and then I reassign the value. In the same variable I'm reassigning the value, and it gets changed to the new value, that is 10. Okay, I can also reassign the value to the same variable. I can make it change to some string also. So for example, in the double quotes, if I assign some value, say joy, okay, and I print it out here, okay, it prints joy. So you see, during the program I am kind of reassigning values to a variable, changing the value of the variable, and not only I'm keeping one type of variable value, I'm also changing the types, right? Now let's understand what are data types, right? Data type is a term that you would hear quite extensively in programming languages. every value belongs to a certain type, right? So if you notice, we have number type. Okay, in number you can have integer, you can have decimal. So I'm just speaking from a mathematical point of view right now. Okay, you have number type which can have integer, decimal, and other kinds of number also, like you have complex numbers, right? You can have a character. Now when I say a character, it means a single character, a single alphabet, like K, H, M. These are all single characters. Okay, and strings, when you say string, these are combination of multiple characters or single character, right? So if I say hello world, all these are string, these are combination of characters. So these are nothing but different data types. An integer is one kind of data type. Decimal, mathematically generally we call it decimal, but in programming language we will call it float. Okay, so this is the terminology difference here. Complex numbers are supported in Python, we will come to it. Character and string together, they can be also used, um, they can be stored in the same variable. As you saw here, variable 1 did was able to store the integer value as well as the string value. So this is something special about Python, that it is dynamically typed. Dynamically typed means that you are not stuck with one kind of value to be going in that variable. The variable can hold any kind of value during the program, right, as you just saw. However, in other languages, like if you see Java, you have to define the data type in the beginning. That means you have to fix the variable with a type, okay, with a data type, and only that particular data can go into that variable. For example, I'll have to say in Java, I'll have to say int and then say variable, and then put only integer value in it. Okay, so this language is not dynamically typed because it's a fixed, it's a fixed routine here, that whatever you define the variable to be, like whatever in the in the in at the stage of defining the variable, whatever decide it to hold, only that kind of value, that type of value it can hold. You cannot have, like now you cannot have later on var1 holding a value like this will error out. However, this is not the case in Python, and hence it is called dynamically typed. Like on the run, on the fly, during the program, you can store any type of value irrespective of the data type. You can store any type of value in that variable. So this is a very different feature in Python, and that is why it is called dynamically typed. So you have to remember it. Okay. Okay. So far clear? Yeah. It will call the latest value. The latest, whatever you have stored, it will call that particular value. Okay. Yeah. So, okay. Now moving to the next, um, majorly we will use we will now see number types. In number type, as I have just mentioned, there are three types of number types here. that is integer, float, and complex. Okay, there are three types of numbers that you can store in Python. You don't have to typecast them, you don't have to uh, you know particularly mention any data type before the variable. That is one thing, but you can store these three types of number in the variable. Okay, now I can say var1 equal 4.78. Okay, this is a valid assignment, and I can also print it out, right? 4.78. Similarly, I can store complex number types. Now, complex number type you may not be using in your day-to-day life these days in programming, but Python is a language which has multiple libraries for specific mathematical functions also. Okay, in that view they have given us the capacity to store complex numbers. Okay, you might remember it from your school days that a complex number would look like something like this: 3 plus 4j, wherein this is the real part of the number and 4j is the complex, the imaginary part of the number. Together they will form a complex number. So to support such mathematical, maths intensive libraries which are very specific to such such nitty-gritties of mathematics, they have provided us with this complex number, and we can assign these values. So this is a very valid assignment, and let's see how the output is. Okay, so it prints out the value like this in within the braces. Okay, so you have seen integer, float, and complex in the number type, and we have also seen how we can have strings assigned to the same variable, and the same is printed out well. uh, with with regards to naming the variable, you can also use the lowercase and uppercase, so that is not a problem. When I said alphanumeric, alpha would contain both the lower cases as well as upper cases. Okay, that is one thing to note. Now I will talk about reserved words. Every language has some words that are specific to the function, to the function of the language. For example, if I say print here, it is something that is an instruction to the interpreter, that interpreter understands. We have not done anything as here. We have not written any code for print, no function for print. The interpreter has some reserved words which it uses for its own purpose. Okay, it knows when it finds print to print out on the console, to output the value on console. The reserved words are also known as keywords. Okay, so these are special words, and since these are special words, we cannot use these words as our variable name, as our identifier. So now I cannot say print equal to. That will be an error, because as soon as the interpreter encounters print here, it is going to take it as a keyword, and whatever that keyword, that special functionality that keyword is supposed to do, it is going to apply the same logic here. Okay, so it kind of gets confusing to use the same keyword. That is why it is not allowed, right? So there are some keywords which in due course of time, in as we learn the language, we will understand that what are those keywords. We will not be using those keywords to identify a variable or identify functions. Okay, that is to note. Some of the keywords I can just list down. For example, we will be uh, we will make a class here. So class is a keyword, we cannot use it. We have loops like conditions and loops construct, which are if, while, for. So these are all special keywords, we cannot use them for our uh, variable name. Okay. Okay, so I think this is we have covered. Are there any questions? Complex data type. No, 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 I'll just tell you. So, it's a mathematical concept, okay, which you may not use in Selenium. We are not going to use it as it is, but just for the purpose of knowledge, I'm sharing that in number type, in mathematics, numbers are of three types. Okay, it's a usual mathematical concept that they are integer, and there's decimal, and there is complex. Now complex numbers are denoted like this, that this is the real component, that the number that you see integer here, this is that particular component, and number has an imaginary component also. So this is just a mathematical concept where you understand that a number according to maths has a real value and an imaginary value. So usually when we write any number as, say if I write any number as 5, mathematics treats it as var 5 plus 0 j. Now this j is an imaginary component. Even when we talk about integers, so in mathematics it is treated like that. Okay, so this is a given. It's like, it's not a theory, it's not a concept that Python is creating or Selenium needs it. It is something that is very inherent to mathematics, right? So only that particular concept they have provided the provision to use here. No, so you don't we are not going to use it in Selenium, because we are not working with such complex numbers. But just for an idea, just that it supports, Python supports complex numbers, I wanted to share it with you this. Now, when we do assignments, like when we do further on operations on numbers, for example, uh, let me comment this out, because see, this is anyways showing a warning since we are using a built-in symbol. It also shows you the warning. This is a trait of, I mean, this is a feature of IDE, that it is showing you the warnings here, right? To assignment to reserved built-in symbol print. Okay, that means we cannot use a reserved keyword here to assign any value. We can use it to call it some value like that, we can use it to print some value like that, but we cannot use it to assign a value. So it did show us the particular problem. Okay, just hold on, just give me a moment. All right, so okay, now let me show you some operations, because that will make it clear for you what would be complex numbers, how they're treated, and why do we have them in Python. What kind of support uh, in terms of mathematics does it provide. So okay, Now if I have a variable 1 which says 9 and I have a variable 2 which says 5, which has the value 5, I can simply print the sum of these two. Okay, like this. So there is this addition operator here, and you are doing this operation of addition on variable 1 and variable 2. Okay, so if when I run the program, it is going to give me the sum 14, right? Similarly, if I have this variable 1 as this complex number and variable 2 as other complex number, I can use the same operation. I can use the same operation and get the output out, which says 15 plus 10j. So this is the kind of support it provides for, for complex numbers in mathematics. It is basically for those who will be using a lot of research work in maths, or basically on on that scale. So this is just for knowledge I share. You don't need to worry like how does it work, but I've also shown you simple operations that can be done on complex numbers, just like they are done on simple operations that can be done on variables usually. So same operations can be done on complex numbers also. So if I want to show you this subtraction operation, you see this works well. Okay, so just know it for now that yes, Python supports complex numbers. It's not very important for our application specifically. When we are working with Selenium, we are not going to use it as much. Okay, is it clear now? All right. Okay, so this is about variables and assignment. Now we can also have multiple assignment to a variable, right? Which means that we can have A and B, and then we can assign okay. So in one line I have two variables on the left side of the equal, and on the right I have again two variables. So correspondingly these variables are assigned to the variable on the left. So this is called, on one line we can have multiple assignments, like multiple variables are given assignments on single line. So that is possible. Now as you saw that when we create a variable, when we write a b equals bus car, when we created the variable, so basically what happens is these memory blocks are assigned. Okay, but when we are done with the program, when suppose we don't want to use a variable, there is a way to delete the variable also. By deleting the variable, what happens in the background is it goes and releases these memory space. Okay, so this now becomes free to be used by any other variable or any other program. It is not occupying the space. It's like it frees the memory block. And how you do that is just by a simple command, that is del, which is a special keyword, and you say a. Okay, so the variable is deleted, a, and after which if you print it, you see what happens. Let's check this out. Okay, so A is not defined. So once you have your deletion done on a variable, it does not exist. Okay, it is a good idea to know it, because many a times you might want to release a variable, after it is used. But anyways, if it is not very memory intensive programming, then you can even leave it like that. Anyways, when the program ends, the variables will be released. Okay, but just to know that yes, there is a way to delete, to deallocate memory basically from that variable, is this is the command to use that. Okay, okay, so let's go into little deeper into the programming. Okay, this is about variables and assignment to variables. Now we will see very briefly, we are going to touch upon some more constructs in programming, and I'll create a new file here which we'll call example 3. Okay, now as you see, a program is a combination of logical steps, right? You want to do something. Now let me write something pseudo, and I'll show you what we are trying to achieve. Okay, some pseudo steps here. For example, I want to log in. This is some library which gets automatically imported, so don't worry. I'm just going to write some steps. For example, I want to log in, maybe open the first page, and then I want to check on the login page with this ID if this is a valid username or not. Okay, so here is a logical step, like I open the URL, I open the browser, and I go on the login ID section, I input some value, and I see if it's a valid username or not, right? Now this pseudo flow has to be translated into code, right? We are going to achieve this, what we see as manual steps, we are going to achieve it in terms of code here, right? You see, everywhere, wherever these logical steps are, there are always some decision making, there are always some checks to be done. If this, then do this. If not, then do something else. There are some checks. Now this is the flow that I took from a web perspective, web application perspective. There can be more logics. Like for example, I want to output just from 1 to 10. I want to only output even numbers. Okay, now the logic would be, so you are going to divide the number by 2. Okay, if remainder is 0, then it is even. If remainder is 1, then it is odd number, right? So you see, everywhere there's a decision making in logic. If this, if that, do this, do that, right? So to carry out any logical flow from the real world, it's very important to have decision making constructs, okay, to know how to implement them. So one of these constructs is if. Just as English language, just as I wrote the logical steps in English language above, similarly we should be able to implement the same logic in program also. The keyword to implement that if decision is if here, and some condition will follow. So now I'm telling you the syntax, that some condition will follow. If this condition is true, then something will be done, which will be in these brackets. If not, then it will not be done. Okay, so this is the flow. If this condition is true, if condition is true, then we will have some steps do this, right? This is the construct of if condition. Now let's see it with some example. Okay, so far it was just the theory. Now I'm going to show you with example. Now for example, I have a variable here and I call it name. Okay, name is a variable which has value 3. Okay, and now I'm going to make some decision based on the value in this variable called name. So if name is greater than 0, so this is an operation which will check for greater if the value is larger than 0. If this is the condition, name is greater than 0. Now name, it will pick up the value from the variable name. If 3 is greater than 0, and after this, you as a syntax you have to put a colon. Okay, if name is greater than 0, then print something. Okay, this is a simple if condition. This is simple decision making, right? Let's save this and execute it. Name is greater than 0. So what happens, it checks for this condition, and always in if, a condition will return you true or false. These are the only two options, right? The condition can either be true or false. If it is true, it will go into the next block. Now a point to note here is that the next block, which is inside F, there is this indentation, a tab I have left, and then the block starts. So if I want to, if the condition is true, I want to print not just one line, I want to print more lines. So all of it is in one block because they are indented at the same spacing. Okay, it's starting from the same column number, which means it is one block. And if I write this, this is also fine, but this particular line, see, greater than 0, greater than 1, 2, and this is like one block. Okay, and this is a different block, even though I don't give a line here, but the indentation indicates that this is a different block now. Okay, syntactically it does not show us any error because there is no error. So one block begins here, other block begins here. So this will be treated like as something to be executed if the statement is true. This comes together as one group, and this comes as different group. So let's see what happens. So it does print 0, 1, 2 and 3. 1, 2, 3, this block is print because this condition is true, and this was anyways going to be printed, right? If I make the condition false, suppose I do the opposite. If name is less than 0, so 3 is not less than 0, and let's see what happens. So since name is not less than 0, it will not enter in the entire block. It is not just one statement, it is the entire block it will not enter into. And this is a normal statement which is not part of if. It's a normal statement which will be executed even if the if does not get executed, if condition is not met, right? So you understand the concept of block here? Okay, cool. Sure, sure. Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. Yes. Yes, I will come to it. That's the next that's the next part to it. I'll come to it. So this is the case where the condition is true. If not true, what do we do? That's the question. So this is like one block, and everywhere, like whenever in all languages you have if and then else. Else is the next block. If the condition is false, this is the next block it will go to. So there are times when you do not want to bother about a contra condition, like if it is not met, if it is false, you don't bother. Okay, you want to do these steps only if it is true. If the condition is true, only do this. Rest I don't bother. There is one use in that case. Other use case is else. So then you will write else. So over here, thing to notice that if and else, they will begin on the same column number. Okay, this is the same hierarchy, else, and then you print something. I'm in else. Okay, so now this condition is false because 3 is not less than 0, and it is going to come in else, right? Note that there is a colon here, there is a colon here. That this is syntactical difference from many other languages here. In C and in Java, you will not see something like that, right? And since this is part of the program, this like now becomes one block within which there is an if and there is an else. But this is like one block, and this is another, like any other statement in the program. Okay. There could be nested ifs also, like if within an if. For example, in the same scenario, if I want to show you the nested if, it is if name is greater than 3, which is a true condition, and within which also I want to have another if, then it will be intended, after some spaces. If name is equal to 3 or 2. So first of all, we are checking if name is greater than 0, if name is greater than 0 and if name is equal to 3. So we are checking for specific condition where name equals 3, then print I am 3. Okay, so this is an example of nested if. There is one if statement within which there is another if statement. So there are two conditions which are nested, and it is basically filtering out a more crisp result. Okay, you're being very specific in your conditions and you're coming to it. So let's see the execution of this also. I'm in 3. Okay, so let's practice some of these if conditions today. Maybe you can take examples from real time, or maybe I can give you some exercises. Like this exercise can be taken, that if you can take any value, variable to be of any value, and you can see if it is odd or even, or you can print a string, and you can see if the string comparisons will be also done in the similar manner. Now let me also take that very briefly. It's a good idea that string comparisons in coming here. Now for example, if I change the variable to say test is a variable, and you note that the variables that I'm creating that are pretty much not color coded, that they are in the same black, conventional form, but these are all color coded. Whatever are the keywords which are the reserved words, they are changing into blue. The strings within the quotes, they have another color code. Okay, and the variables have this normal black text color code. Okay, so test, and I give some hello here, and then I will match it. So if test equals, so when you are doing an equal statement, the checking whether this is equal to this, you use 2 times the equal sign. Okay, in assignment you use 1 time, like when you're using name equal 3, this is like assigning value to the variable. But when you're comparing the two value in condition, you will use double equal signs. So if test equals hello, so I'll say print I am hello, else. There's a slight difference in the spelling, and I'm evaluating on that. Hello. Okay, so it is basically checking for the right spelling and printing out which is the, if printing out for the checking for the value and printing out the same value actually. Okay, so if I change the value to double L hello, okay, so it can be used to equate string, it can be used to equate variables of number type. Okay, the method is the same. Right, so just try to play with this code a bit with if and with variables. Try to give them some value, see what happens. The more you do hands-on and you kind of explore on your own, the better it will be. You'll learn it faster. So I think we can stop here for today. I think you have enough to explore. We'll begin tomorrow again with further more programming constructs. Jennifer, can I have your email ID, please? I can hear you. I just wanted to have your email ID. I was not able to figure out which was yours. Yeah, you can just type it on the chat. I'll copy it.